Long before the coming of man, perhaps even before chaos made its mark on the planet, the sprawling forests of Athel Loren became self-aware. A unified consciousness that learned of anger, that learned of hate, that learned how to defend itself using the malevolent spirits that patrolled the wildwood. But it wasn't enough. The forest burned, the weave rebelled, and a new champion was required. So Durthu Oakheart, eldest of ancients, sheltered the elves in the hopes that one day they could save his realm. The mantle of King in the Woods has passed from one Azrai prince to another since time immemorial, a cycle of death and rebirth irrevocably tied to the seasons. Thus, does the king pass willingly into his own funeral pyre each midwinter, only to be reborn into thunderous life on the first day of spring. The weight of millennia weighs heavily on Orion, as the haunting echo of long-forgotten spirits whisper and wriggle through his mind. But one soul within shines brightly above all others. Kurnous, the hunter, father of the elven race and lord of both forests and beasts. His indomitable will bound the Wood Elves to the wild forests of Athel Loren and to the spirits that dwelled within. Now, the heart of Athel Loren is threatened by the pompous Azor, and Orion, King in the Woods and herald of the wild hunt, leads the final defense of the King's Glade. His spirit is all-encompassing, his courage unyielding, his soul one with the yoke of ages. He is everything that defines the Azrai, and would gladly give his life and the lives of all his people to ensure in Edri Eternos remains eternal. But the High Elves of Ulthuan have other ideas. The White Lions of Crace have served as the bodyguards of the Phoenix King since the reign of Kalendor the Conqueror, and in their long, illustrious history of service, few have rivaled the meteoric rise of Alistar the Hunter. Inspired by the sacrifice of Korhine Ironglaive at the Battle of Finneval Plains, the physically imposing elf entered Finnebar Seafarer's service at a young age, proving himself in combat against the beasts of the Anuli Mountains. It wasn't long before his axe tasted the blood of Cainite assassins, sleeper agents tasked with killing high-ranking nobles or even the chosen of Azurian himself, and for obvious reasons, his bravery put him in the good graces of the Phoenix Throne. Though his true place is in Lothern at the side of his king, Alistar has proven his worth countless times as a leader of elves, and a warrior with few equals on the field of battle, so it was no surprise when Finnebar chose him to lead an expedition into the beating heart of Athel Loren. Too long have the Azrai stood defiant in their forest kingdom, uncaring of that which transpires between the Southern Elves of Ulthuan and Nagaroth, and the world at large. Too long has the King in the Woods defied the unity of a single race with a single purpose. It is time to bring their people back into the fold, with diplomacy if possible, by force if necessary. Alistar, his White Lions, and the silent guardians of the Shrine of Azurian would see it done, or die in the attempt. And so Orion, King in the Woods and living avatar of Kurnous, sallies forth at the head of a vengeful Azrai warhost. The forest has risen in defense of the King's Glade, and though it's been thousands of years since there was open conflict between these two peoples, war is inevitable. If the High Elves wanted diplomacy, they shouldn't have brought fire-breathing dragons. Forest is none too pleased with that decision. So yeah, this is the King's Glade, a gorgeous custom map by Maruka, centered in a vast clearing where many elves make their home, and as you can see, it is very defensible. 3 natural choke points, and a few magical towers can make the stream in the center held to cross, but the Azur are perhaps uniquely suited to this style of combat. They can trade shots with Wood Elf archers reasonably well. They have a bunch of monsters that deal fire and magical damage, meaning they can bypass physical resistance and deal additional DPS in combat, so it should be a very interesting matchup. You guys might have noticed from the thumbnail, we are on Steel Faith Overhaul 2.0. Model cover in detail quite soon, but for a quick recap, health pools are bigger, combat lasts a bit longer, and elite units are more dangerous, more expensive, and smaller in number. Basically, everything that a unit in the source material is gets accentuated and brought a bit more into the spotlight to highlight its differences and make it stand out a bit more in SFO. So with all that said, let's get it poppin' here. High Elf Mage on a Chariot doing some early scouting, looking for some weaknesses in the Wood Elf defense. You can see those arrows of Kurnous making their way across the water. Those are from the siege towers. They're not particularly accurate or massively damaging, but they can rack up some decent kills if they're given time to fire and have clear line of sight. So no time to waste for Alistar and his White Lions. Soul Quench ripping a hole through the front ranks of the Azrai. And that Chariot needs to be careful. Look at that, only 2 shots. And it's already taken that much damage. You do not want to stick around in the crosshairs with that kind of firepower for too long. Orion has 800 missile damage in Steel Faith Overhaul. he's beastly. Unbreakable, big HP pool, causes terror, of course, a ton of mobility. You can wade in and deal damage in melee with the best of them. So Lothar and C, oh my god, that was a spear of Kurnous just went through, just fountaining blood everywhere. Yeah, and the Azure moving up now, Archer's getting into range. And this choke point, you can see, it is very defensible. We're right on the edge of the stream here, and that'll kind of force these High Elves into a choke point where they don't necessarily want to be. It opens up opportunities for Orion to call in his Hounds or a Juicy Dwellers below to send some souls to another realm. Lots of fire crisscrossing between the two armies. Let's shift over as the Wild Riders of Kurnous and some Illyrian Reavers and Dragon Princes getting in there. Now, Dragon Princes have received some big buffs in terms of their stats. They are very high tier now, like 2,500 gold, but very low in number as well. So they're very susceptible to being swarmed. It'll be an interesting cav engagement over there with some of the Azrai Spear War Dancers coming in to reinforce. Dryads and the Eternal Guard getting in there. White Lions are higher tier in SFO now, and Alistar the White Lion getting in there, leading his men into the thick of the fighting. First into the fray, laying about with that gigantic armor-piercing axe. And all White Lions Thunder armor now. So they are more of that high-tier value that you would expect from the Guardians of the Phoenix King. Makes sense that they aren't in vanilla, because honestly, High Elves do need something that's a bit more cost-effective on the front line. So they're in a good spot in vanilla, but they have a different role in Steel Faith Overhaul as a more elite unit. And Orion slaughtering them in melee with that huge Spear of Kurnous. Love seeing him get some action in. God, they're just getting scythed in half by his massive weapon. And so he will anchor the line very nicely there and try to keep the Azrai in the fight. Now out on this flank, Eternal Guard and a Tree Man smacking some Phoenix Guard around with that Pimpan. Does have magical attacks, but Phoenix Guard have a true ward save now. Not just physical resistance, which is a pretty interesting change. You see a random eagle flying around there. And War Dancers and the Wildwood Rangers, who were waiting in reserve, need to get in there. Now this is a bit dangerous, because there are dragons on the field. And dragons have fire breath. And getting blobbed up, and especially magic in this game, of course, can punish you very heavily. Steel Faith Overhaul magic, a little bit more damaging than it is in vanilla, but it's a little bit harder to tell a difference between the two, simply because magic in general in Game 2 is in such a better shape than it was in Game 1. But can't get too blobbed up there. And there's a Tree Man still doing his thing, and Fire Breath being unleashed by the Sun Dragon, and that's why you don't do that. Oh my god. Absolute carnage unleashed on the Azrai right flank. 3 units immediately begin wavering, and I don't blame them. That is a terrible way to die, to watch your friends die. Burnt alive by Sun Dragon breath. Awful way to go. Now the Phoenixes are looking to hunt down the Spellsinger. She sets her flying. But there's a Tree Man Ancient nearby, and King Orion and his Hunters, the Wild Riders. And this is a great way to tie down flyers, get those really fast units in there. I believe Wild Riders like 105, 110 move speed. They're insanely quick. Great attack values, Frenzy. They'll be able to completely surround the Phoenixes here. And with the help of some Azrai Spear War Dancers, that is a fantastic engagement for the Wood Elves. Slaughter those Phoenixes if they stick around for too long. Sun Dragons have landed in the back lines and beginning to cause that terror coated in the blood of their victims. Treekin holding for now, but Phoenix Guard, Sun Dragon picking up an unfortunate Azrai Spear War Dancer or Wildwood Ranger and just slamming them into the ground over and over until it turns into red paste. 2 Sun Dragons is tough. That wasn't a great breath. But the Wood Elves are going to have to start focusing more units over on the right side if they want to hold back the tide there. Orion being sniped down by a bunch of archers, blood fountaining out of his body. Very powerful physical stature there. Well, it doesn't really matter when there are 60 or 80 archers all firing into you at once. You can see his HP's gotten very low. He does have the Cloak of Isha, so he will get a ton of magical or healing regeneration there that might be able to get him back in the fight. And Regrowth is on the field as well, while Alistar the White Lion and his White Lion bodyguard dealing with the Tree Men sent flying there. It's an interesting fight. Armor Sundering might make it tough for that Tree Man, and some Phoenix bombs dropping down. Dropping some fiery bird poop on the heads of the left flank as Starfire Shafts whistle across, get some good damage in there. And that looked to be a spell, but it disappeared. I see the Phoenix knocked the Spellsinger down in the back and canceled it. Tree Men still holding the line for now, but it is very tough. Middle's not going very well for the Wood Elves. Right flank is going much better, though. Some War Dancers have actually gotten through and look to be getting into the back of the archers and maybe trying to shut them down as the Sun Dragon flies overhead. Tries to maybe imbue some terror if it decides to land. Arrow of Kurnous Tower still getting some shots in. And that will be a Dwellers Below. Reaching up, tendrils, angry tendrils, looking to rip and tear and shred the Azure into little itty bitty pieces. And look at that damage. Beautiful. You can see a lot of those High Elf Spearmen are starting to get jibbed now. Great cast, but not enough. There wasn't a whole lot of Wood Elves left in the center, and what was left was also damaged by that spell. And they'll have to retreat and rethink their strategy, because the High Elf Spear Wall is holding incredibly strong right now as Hounds of Orion bounce through the Azure line. Treekin making their mark on the battlefield here. The White Lions and the Azure Spearmen are really just, their morale is fantastic. They will oftentimes fight almost to death. And covered in blood, doesn't really matter. They don't care about the fear that these tree men cause. And jibbing a couple of them, picking them up, and these angry, malevolent spirits from Sithrall, the Wildwood, are doing their work. But with the Sun Dragons, both of them landing in the rear, Wild Riders in there as well. I think the Sun Dragons might be too much for the Wood Elf left flank. But the tree men have anchored the line for now, surrounded by some Azure Spearmen. That's so awesome. I love the Wood Elf animations. The tree men are so satisfying. That is so incredibly satisfying to watch. The vines just appear like tendrils out of that angry fist and rip people up. It's great. The tree men making a bunch of them rout, and they're going to rethink their engagement. Phoenix flying overhead. But look at this. One of the Phoenix is very low, surrounded by the armor sundering of the Azure Spear War Dancers. We're AP as well, and they killed it. But it is reborn because it's a Phoenix at full HP. I didn't actually realize there was an animation for it until just now in this replay. I didn't realize that there was literally an animation for it going into the ground and coming back alive. And that is a game changer right there. That Phoenix had no HP left, and now it has come back with full. Remember that it causes terror. It can drop bombs again. That's a big swing right there. Big swing for the High Elves as the Noble deals with some of the Treekin. And with its AP and bonus for Sludge, you will be able to bring some of those Treekin down. So you might want to rethink the engagement there. Spellsinger trying to provide some support. King Orion trying desperately to keep the Azrai left flank intact, but they are beginning to break. But that Sun Dragon is super low, and the King in the Woods is hunting it down here. Spellsinger very close. Sun Dragon routes and might not come back to the fight. Very low HP, very low leadership on it. Another Dwellers Below, this time on the Phoenix Guard, but their ward save might keep them protected. It's like a 10%, 5 or 10% ward save. Pure ward save against magical damage and physical resistance as well. And that didn't actually do a whole lot to the Phoenix Guard there. Kept them in their fight. Spellsinger dealing with the Noble Treekin. Also helping out here, and King Orion wants none of it. Yeah, you might be a High Elf Noble, but you will not be able to deal with the King in the Woods, who is running over him with those big cow feet or deer feet, smacking him into the ground. And that's going to be a tough fight for any Lord in Warhammer Fantasy to deal with 1v1 against the King in the Woods. He's a beast in Steel Faith Overhaul. He's quite good, honestly. Bell Gibson is a monster in vanilla as well, but the Noble wants none of it and runs away. So it's very close battle here. Tons of dead on both sides. Sun Dragon still trying to cause terror, trying to cause that break. But the Azrai have great leadership as well, and bolstered by their king, they will fight to the death here. Phoenixes, Sun Dragon, White Lions, and Alistar's in there somewhere. Not sure we'll be able to find them just yet. While the Wild Riders and some of the Azrai Spear War Dancers fight the Azure Spearmen out here in the back. Now, of course, not a great engagement for the Wild Riders, for the Stags that make up the personal bodyguard of Orion. But with a rear charge here, that could be enough to finish off this unit. And yeah, some great decapitations and amazing animations from the Spear Dancers. But not a lot of them left. Both sides so damaged after this brutal fighting in the stream. And the noble blood of Kalidor, royal blue armor of the Dragon Prince is drenched in the life force of friend and foe alike, as Rangers and Dryads swarm in to attack. And a Tree Man, desperate now, sensing the danger to his ancestral home, moves in to support. Treekin getting a rear charge in. Those Dragon Princes have sizable physical resistance, which of course will get bypassed by the Tree Men and Treekin attacks because they deal magical damage. Very close battle. This battle is hanging on a knife edge at this point. Could swing either way as the Sun Dragon and his fire breath and his flaming attacks come in and cause terror from behind. Where is King Orion? Making his way over from the left side of the engagement, coming over to support. looking to slaughter the Sun Dragon as the Dragon Princes charge in, try to shut him down, but that Spear of Kurnous and that massive AP damage, they don't want none of that. And as they run away, because they don't want to deal with that engagement, a big spear, blood fountaining off in the distance there. Beautiful shot. Very few things in this game quite as satisfying as seeing that 700 missile damage just scythe through 8 or 9 units in a row. And at this point, the living embodiment of Kurnous is trying desperately to get the attention of that beast from Kalador, a huge sun dragon that has already killed so many of his people on this fateful day, turns towards the hunter, and a duel of epic proportions is on the way. God versus monster, dragon versus avatar, let's go. That is such an amazing shot, seeing that sun dragon swoop down with the high elf army watching in the background, breathing flame and noxious fumes, and what better way to end a battle. Wood elf armies in shambles, so many are dead or dying, and this may be the start of a long, hard winter, perhaps the toughest in living memory, but Durthu and Ariel still live, and the Oak of Ages remains intact, and as long as they stand, the hopes of the Faefolk burn eternal. And look at what is left of the High Elf army. Almost nothing. Alistar the White Lion and his Phoenix Guard and the White Lions and Dragon Princes of Kalador will not be able to move further into the forest to take out the Oak of Ages or bring the Wood Elves into the fold. And honestly, probably not the best diplomacy they've ever used. A little bit cocky, a little bit pompous of the Azure to expect they could walk in and truly finish off the Wood Elves. But they have won this battle. Sun Dragon and Orion, and a Phoenix comes in, and Orion falls. King of the Woods is dead, and he will be reborn in the next spring. But for now, Wood Elves are in a bad way with some worse people. The Azure win. The High Elves win. Fantastic battle. So much fun to play. So much fun to watch. Let's take a look at the stats here. So yeah, that Sun Dragon breath that I caught on camera on my right flank absolutely destroyed me. Punished me super heavily for blobbing. Very nice cast. Cannot blob against Sun Dragon or Star Dragon breath. It will make you very sad, especially if you're the Wood Elves. Flame attacks will hurt a lot. Orion, King in the Woods, was a monster in this game. By far the most impactful Lord or hero character in the game. 188 kills is incredibly good in Steel Faith Overhaul. The Glade Guard did alright, although I mismicroed a couple of them. I think they even got stuck into melee for a bit longer than they were supposed to. Treekin held the line well. Treemen Ancients weren't amazing in terms of kills, but they're tanky, and that's what they're supposed to do. But ultimately, it was the White Lions and their armor sundering that was just too much for me to handle. Really hope you guys enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching. See you next time.